We are at the GLF. That means nothing starts on time. We still need to wait for one speaker. I have my 5 speakers already. They're all waiting to start with their talks, but one speaker is missing, so we will give him a couple of more minutes and then we will start. All right, ladies and gentlemen, now we are definitely starting with the final round of the landscape talks here at the GLF. I want to have 6 speakers, 5 already there, 5 brilliant speakers who are all waiting to come here on stage. But first of all, I want to know from you, who is here for the first time? Who has never seen a landscape talk? Okay, I see a couple of hands going up. That means that the rest of you already know how things are done here. I would also ask the people that are still standing here if you could kindly sit, because we've already started. If you're planning on staying here, please get a seat. Charles, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so what we're doing here is all about sharing knowledge. We have scientists, we have researchers, we have people working in different sectors. They all know a lot, but other people don't know what they have been working on. They don't know about their findings, so they will be here to tell us about the daily work that they do and also the challenges that they are facing. Now, we here at the Landscape Talks believe that anything that's worth saying can be said in 7 minutes, and that is the only amount of time that we have given our speakers. So they have 7 minutes to tell us whatever they want to tell us, to inform us about the work that they are doing. What I want from my audience, I do not want a passive audience. Today I was told that they had enough sandwiches, so I believe that every one of you is full. Everybody of you is full of energy, and that's why I want you to really cheer for the people who are coming on stage. A big round of applause when I introduce somebody, and then we also clap once the person leaves the stage. So, my first speaker at this last round of talks is Dr. Paolo Agostini. She is the lead environmental economist at the World Bank. She will be here to talk about smart technologies and Forest Smart. Welcome, Dr. Paula.
Thank you very much. I have a presentation, if it can be put on the screen. Let me see. Is the presentation coming up? Can you check?
All right, I've been told that they are checking whether they have yours. Because we have swapped, she was supposed to be number 2, and the first presentation we already had, so we're not sure about whether they have yours.
It's called Smart Technology for Smart Technology.
Smart Technology for Smart, do you have that? If you have that presentation, can you please pull it up now? Do you want to let the other person do their presentation first? And
well, I guess.
I know you need to be somewhere else.
I need to be somewhere else.
Yeah, okay. That would be the only possibility. All right, 20 seconds, they said. Maybe you can start without the slides, and then they will pull them up, and then you will see them there in front on the screen.
Fantastic. Okay, so, well, I think it's coming. All right, thank you very much. When you look at these pictures, what do you see? You see a pristine forest, a fantastic forest, but under this forest, a vibrant economy is happening. Legal and illegal, formal and informal. With this tech talk, I want to tell you how technologies can help the billion of people that depends on forests for their livelihood and for their income to really increase their livelihood and improve their landscape and look after the restoration of their landscape through smart technologies. Here we are in Ghana, where 15 years ago, camera traps were used only by scientists that wanted to monitor biodiversity for maybe making a publication. And now, this technology is used by communities to look after their most important assets, which is the biodiversity they have, and their income depends on this biodiversity. And in Ghana, they are restoring entire corridors to really increase the productivity of the land and allow the biodiversity to be there and the animals to be there. They depend on these important assets. But the camera not only it traps lions, but also poachers. And this is helping to bring a lot of accountability at the local level. Here we are in Brazil, where in one of the most remote areas of Brazil, far more remote than any farmland, you can reach these places only by river, on boats. And technology is helping these people to reach a multi-billion-dollar market of cosmetic products coming from the Amazon, and essential oil, nuts, things that are extremely important for cosmetics. So through technology, they are reaching these multi-billion-dollar markets. And again, landscape restoration and landscape management, it's essential for the livelihood of these people. More than 30% of the income of these people depends on these products. Here we are in Liberia, where many years ago, the incomes from the timber industry were really just fueling the war. The UN imposed a sanction on Liberia because on the timber coming from Liberia because of that. And there were no revenues going into the coffer of the government. So the lifting of the UN sanction on timber were predicated on having a barcode system, a system that would track the logs from the stamp to the port. A barcode system, a tracking system was put in place, the sanctions were lifted, but most importantly, revenue started to flowing back in the coffer of the government, and they were used for development, for education, for health, for landscape restoration in the degraded parts of Liberia. Here we are in Madagascar. Again, incredible problems of deforestation and degradation in Madagascar. And through the use of radar, through the use of satellite images, the boats were identified that were illegally trafficking rosewood, which is one of the most precious wood in the world. It is one of the few wood that is listed in the CITES. endangered species list and was trafficked between Madagascar and Singapore. And it was worth $50 million. And now we are helping Madagascar to see how they can use these revenues and invest them in protection, in conservation of the landscape, in restoration of the degraded landscape. Here we are in Indonesia, where, as you know, 2 years ago, they had one of the worst fires and that caused a lot of problems, not only in Indonesia, but even in countries close by. And these forest fires were monitored through satellite images, through drones. And the World Bank was able to publish a report that was really looking at what was the cost of these fires. And the cost was calculated in more than $60 billion. And this report came out just around the conversation that were happening in Paris for the COP. And it really helped to contribute to change the conversation at the COP in Paris. And after that, also, the Peatland Restoration Agency was created. Here we are on crime scene investigation. As you know, wildlife trafficking is one of the worst issues that we are facing in our landscape, and it's really an international issue. The World Bank is helping many countries to identify where the trophies are coming from. And this helps not only to identify the hotspots of poaching, which in this case for elephants are Tanzania and the areas around Gabon, but also we are joining hands with Interpol and with CITES to really stop this international crime. And here we are just, forest degradation and deforestation are contributing, as you know, as has been discussed in this Global Landscape Forum, to more than 1/3 of the emission. And they can really be part also of the solution. And so Earth observation are used by the World Bank and by many partners to really keep track and monitor what is happening on the landscape. And what I want to say is that we are not doing this in one country. We are doing this in 50 countries. We are doing this at scale. And now, why don't we think about some crazy technology for the future? Why not thinking about using drones to replant and restore degraded landscape in places that are too difficult to reach or too dangerous to reach? This has been done in Thailand, and in one day they planted more than 100,000 trees. Well, I hope that now, when you look at this picture, you not only see the forest for the tree, but the tree for the forest. Smart technologies help us be forest smart. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paula, for giving us your time, your 7 minutes. We know that you need to be somewhere else, but thank you so much for talking to us. And now you need to go to another panel to share your knowledge there. All right, if you are tweeting about this event, if you're posting pictures on Instagram, please be sure to use the hashtags for the GLF, that is GLF Bonn 2017, and also hashtag ThinkLandscape. And with that, I want to welcome Tara O'Shea. She is the Director of Forest Programs at Planet, and she will be here to tell us more about leveraging new Earth observation and machine learning technologies to measure progress towards climate and sustainable development goals. Tara, welcome.
Thank you. Okay, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining this session. My name is Tara O'Shea. I'm the Director of Forest Programs at Planet. And I'm very excited to share a little bit more today about recent advances in Earth observation and machine learning technologies, and also discuss what this might mean for both measuring and advancing progress on global climate and sustainable development goals. So first, a little bit more about Planet. Some of you are familiar with us. A few of you were meeting for just the first time. Planet is a mission-driven space technology company. We were founded in 2011 with a vision of using space to help life on Earth. And we say that our mission 1, which we have now achieved as of the past couple of months, is to image everywhere on Earth every day in order to make global change visible, accessible, and actionable. So how do we do this? How on Earth is it possible to image the entire planet every day from space? Well, Planet actually designs, builds, and operates the largest constellation of Earth-observing satellites in human history. We have nearly 200 satellites in orbit today, but each of our Dove satellites is very small. So this is our Dove satellite. It's about the size of a loaf of bread, yet it's capable of imaging at 3 meters per pixel in the optic, so that's red, green, blue, as well as near infrared. So really what Planet has done is take the consumer electronics revolution and put it into space technologies. And this has allowed us to really do 2 things. The first is that we are able to iterate fast and often on the design of this satellite. So our satellites can improve in their capabilities at about the same rates that your consumer electronics do. It also allows us to mass produce these satellites. So from our manufacturing facility in downtown San Francisco, we can produce about 20 of these Dove satellites per week. So if you're mass producing, you also need to mass launch. This is a video from a record-breaking launch earlier this year. This is an Indian PSLV rocket. We had 88 of our Dove satellites on board. So we actually largely credit this launch with our ability to achieve Mission 1. This is actual footage of our Dove satellites being deployed out the back of that rocket into their orbit. I think this footage is pretty incredible, really gives you a sense of the scale for just how little these are and how big our Earth is. So a quick illustration of what this constellation looks like in practice. I, like many of you, have a background in environmental sciences. I do not have an aerospace background. And so I tend to describe this to people as a string of pearls around the Earth at about a 10:30 a.m. crossing time. And each of those pearls is, of course, one of our Dove satellites. And they just stay in that same orbit. And as the Earth rotates underneath them, they image the same place at the same time every day. So it is really a real-time line scanner for the surface of the Earth. And if you take anything away from this illustration, I want you to notice that this is a totally passive system, right? So it's this combination of the smaller satellite, the passive constellation, that has really allowed us to drastically bring down the cost and increase the coverage of Earth observation. Okay, if we think back to that Mission 1, I said we also wanted to make this information accessible and actionable. So this is an illustration of our platform from which users can go and access our Earth observation data. You'll notice that it's a pretty familiar and intuitive interface, right? It's very similar to many of the consumer mapping applications that we are now so used to. And indeed, we do think of it as adding a time access to maps. So you'll see you can go look at a region of interest. It looks, we're looking here at California. You can see the monthly base map product. Let's say you were interested in zooming in on a particular area. You wanted to understand how it was changing over time. Here we are zooming into the agricultural fields of California's Central Valley, and we're looking at some of the flooding events that occurred there earlier this year. So if you wanted a sense of how did these floods affect individual fields or crops, you can look at how that change happened over time. You can imagine how this is extremely useful in any sort of natural disaster event, and indeed it is. And another thing I want you to notice in this platform will grow more analytical over time, but for now you can do kind of manual interpretation, right? So you can compare the same area over time, look at how it's changing, look at how certain events have affected the situation on the ground. But it's worth noting that no human could do that sort of manual or visual interpretation for the whole planet every day, right? No one, you probably couldn't even do it just for all the areas that you're interested in. And so this is why the parallel advances in machine learning are so important. And at Planet, we have a theory of change for how we think that these parallel Earth observation and machine learning technologies might ultimately help us address what are today our biggest social and environmental challenges. We call this theory of change the 4 I's. So the first I, kind of like the bottom layer of this framework, is information. And this is what we are revolutionizing today, right? Imaging everywhere on Earth every day at 3 meters per pixel. This is just more information than has ever been available in Earth observation. And we're not alone, right? Even here in the past 2 days, I've heard a number of really amazing crowdsourcing initiatives happening. If you are in Silicon Valley, where we were funded, you hear this big data term all the time. And it's true. We're just generating a ton of information. But what's really interesting is at the same time, we're getting better at understanding what all of that information is telling us. So we can leverage things like computer vision, machine learning. We can tie those data sets together. We can begin to understand insights from all this information. When those insights are consistent over time, when they're validated by third parties, then we can start to develop indicators of global change. And at Planet, we believe it's those sorts of indicators that can ultimately inform new instruments on the value of what are today environmental and social externalities. So what do I mean by an instrument, a new instrument? I mean policy instruments that help us design more resilient cities to disasters. I mean financial instruments that help us move large pools of private capital in a more sustainable direction. What's important to notice through this 4 I's framework is that as we move through the 4 I's, we're moving towards less information but more value. Okay, so what does this mean for something like landscapes? If we think about where we are today, we're still down in that bottom information layer, right? It's now improved information, but that's where we are. So this is PlanetScope imagery from about this time last year over a site in Bolivia. I want you to notice 2 things. The first is the spatial resolution, right? So at 3 meters per pixel, this is just a much higher resolution than we have ever had available in a wall-to-wall way in the tropics, right? At this resolution, you can distinguish the texture of the forest, you can see individual tree crowns, and that's really important. I also want you to notice the temporal resolution. This is a couple of months, not a couple of years, and that is the rate at which change is happening on the ground. With this temporal resolution, we can also start to see some of the precursors of change, right? You can see the roads going in before the assets are taken out of the forest. So what's important to see is that this combination of the improved spatial and temporal resolution gives us signatures of change that we couldn't see before. We can see them now. Algorithms and computers can too. So if we think about moving through that 4 I's framework, what if we not only saw that change, but what if we also knew what it meant automatically and with a high accuracy in terms of carbon emissions to the atmosphere? What if we had a spatially explicit indicator of forest carbon stocks and emissions updated daily across the globe? Might that be a sort of indicator that could inform new policy and financial instruments for REDD+ or other critical initiatives? It's these sorts of indicators that we are beginning to scope collaboratively with partners, and we are looking to work collaboratively with the international community to both develop these indicators, but also ensure that they can ultimately be adopted in the policy and financial instruments of the future. So with that, thank you very much, and I look forward to the questions and discussion.
Thank you very much, Tara. You said that you look forward to the questions and discussions. During the previous sessions, we always managed to do a question and answer session after all the talks were done, but today I cannot promise that because there will be the closing plenary at 6. That means we need to be punctual. We need to finish on time. So, my dear speakers, if you keep your time, then maybe we'll have like 10 minutes later for questions from the audience. I also want to say hi to everybody who's watching us via live stream. And just remember that everything that you see here is being recorded. That means that later today, or even tomorrow, or the next days, you can rewatch the talks here. They will be cut individually and posted online on the GLF website and also on the GLF YouTube channel. And now I want to welcome Max Adkins. He is the acting manager of Connect for Climate, and he's also a climate expert. He will tell us about technology and innovation when it comes to the SDG 13, the SDG that has to do with climate action. Big round of applause for Max.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to try and inspire you and let you know why I am excited today about being alive today. So Connect for Climate is a global partnership program based at the World Bank. We collaborate with more than 500 partners around the world to share knowledge, inspire climate solutions, and promote ambitious action. We target the influential industries, including film, fashion, music, sports, as well as design and technology. And it's really around that space that we need to get active on. So this is the quote that came out of the climate conference. COP23 happened here in Bonn, in this venue. And we worked with the Fijians as well as the Germans to come up with the messaging that we are uniting for climate action. We're going further, we're going faster, we're going together. And it's really the further and faster that needs to be tackled, because we know we're going together already. We've got all countries on board with the Paris Climate Agreement. We've got businesses, local and city leaders. We've got individuals, civil society, all coming together saying that we need to really get serious about climate change. And it's a further and faster that really underlined what the discussions were here in Bonn, because we heard that we're already at 1.5 degrees Celsius. We know that climate is affecting today's society. We're seeing the extreme weather events. We're seeing the hurricanes. And it's really the poor who are most affected. And that's the message that Connect for Climate helps to relay, is that we will never end poverty if we don't tackle climate change, because tackling climate change and addressing our poverty situation around the world goes hand in hand, as does sustainable development. So, looking at the past, we went through a Stone Age, and we left that behind not because we ran out of stones, but because we came up with new technologies and innovations. Same thing for the Bronze Age. Same thing for the Iron Age. We left it behind not because we ran out of iron ore, but we're still using iron ore today. But today, we're actually producing iron ore, zero carbon iron ore in Sweden, where they harness wind energy to create hydrogen, and then use that hydrogen to fire up their furnaces to smelt the iron, and hence we get zero carbon iron. Then we went into the Industrial Revolution, and we had the water wheel, the steam engine, electricity helped progress us. And then fossil fuels obviously drove a lot of our global economic growth and development, and we thank fossil fuels for that. But we are now on the cusp of a new revolution, the sustainability revolution. And that is really where our society is shifting. It's driven by technology and innovation. And to highlight a quote on that from Al Gore, we're in the early stages of a sustainability revolution that is at the scale of the Industrial Revolution, but at the speed of the digital revolution. And that's really why I am excited about being alive today. It's not because of the climate impacts, it's because of the fact that we're going to be solving this. And we're all going to be a part of that. So maybe just to highlight some of the World Bank's work around this. We recently presented 12 transformative solutions that the World Bank is working around for the One Planet Summit. So to look into those, we presented Resilient Coasts. So it's working with 17 projects, 17 countries in West Africa to build up their resilience around coastal erosion. We know already 500,000 people are affected in West Africa, and the rising sea level and the erosion and flooding that's taking place is costing those countries around 2% of their GDP. The second transformative solution was climate insurance. As the climate impacts become more severe, more impactful, it's really about uplifting those who are most affected and giving them the insurance policies. The third was climate-smart agriculture, and we have heard a lot about that here at the Landscapes Forum. The World Bank invests about $4 billion in commitments around climate-smart agriculture annually. Then resilient cities. We've got the Resilient Cities program, where we know that 2.5 billion people will be moving into cities over the next 25 years. And cities are responsible for about 70% of the greenhouse gases. So that is a tangible and a very effective place to help institutionalize the sustainable revolution. Mobility, sustainable mobility is the fifth transformative solution that we presented. And that's really because mobility produces about 23% of our greenhouse gas emissions from fossil fuels. We are helping shift to electric as well as a hydrogen-driven mobility infrastructure, and coming up with innovations such as a bus rapid transport system. Landscapes and forests, about $1.3 billion of our forest-related work goes into forest restoration and forest protection. We heard it already from Paola Agostini earlier. Hydromet, again, at the core of hydrometeorological services is technology and innovation. And that we're targeting now for the sub-Saharan continent, African continent. Green bonds, these are innovative financing tools. So again, innovation is driving the new economy. And this year, green bonds are surpassing $130 billion, which helps drive the renewable energy revolution. Carbon pricing, we know that carbon pricing should be around the level of $40 to $80, according to the Stern report, by 2020. And we're helping build a coalition. We just heard yesterday, or it might have been this morning, that China now is actually implementing the largest emission trading scheme. And that is really innovative market mechanisms to help drive the sustainable revolution. Geothermal, the often untold renewable energy solution. In Indonesia, we're helping them build 1 gigawatts of geothermal. Of course, we've all heard of solar, rooftop, large-scale solar farms. The rollout of that has been exponential, and that has driven costs down to record lows and made it competitive with coal-fired electricity. Finally, we focused on energy efficiency in India, because that's the low-hanging fruit. And it's estimated that in India, you can actually save up to $11 billion just by implementing efficiency solutions such as LED lights, as well as capturing heat and repurposing that. So overall, building the sustainable revolution is a huge opportunity, estimated to be around $90 trillion by the new climate economy over the next 15 years. That is the kind of investment that the world has not seen previously, and that is something that we should really be excited about, being a part of that new industrial revolution. So the digital world is helping drive these technologies and innovations. And for that, we've got a video about Hack for Climate.
Here at COP23 on the Fiji, our small island hacker boat. We're together with 100 hackers coming from 30 different countries, united for climate action. We have this biggest problem the world faces, climate change, and this huge innovation driver, distributed ledger technology or blockchain. And there was no connection.
There's a huge gap between the people who make policies and the people who are working with new technologies. Whereas when you put them together, you can come up with complete new solutions.
We want to bridge this gap between innovation and regulation. The main aim for us to organize a hackathon during COP23 is to bring those two together as closely as possible.
Blockchain is a set of thousands of nodes where a complete ledger is running. So what's the impact? It's transparency. Everyone has access to the same information. It is secure because you can only add information, you cannot modify or take it out. And it is efficient because you can take out the man in the middle role.
And so could really be an important part of climate action.
You see all the people working here, they are working on solutions.
We're working on an app called Evoke, trying to personalize climate change through stories and using blockchain technology. It makes it more real for people who may not know what it's like living on an island where there's rising sea level. So it's just bringing that a little closer to them so that they're able to do something about it.
Our team, we are working on something we call an energy island. We are making a model where you just implement a couple of devices that can trade their energy between the devices for off-grid areas where there's no energy at all. And the deals are then paid for and registered on the blockchain.
24 hours is not a lot of time. Yeah, but I mean, that's just like climate change. I mean, we're running out of time.
We at Hack for Climate are uniting for climate, and we think with blockchain we can go a lot further, a lot faster, and definitely more together.
So really, digital progress is helping our technology and innovation to drive those solutions that we need to tackle climate change. But it's not only that. Obviously, we also have to look at our consumer patterns. We have to encourage bold leadership. And that's where the World Bank has come forward with a statement that they're not going to finance upstream oil and gas from 2019. And it's that kind of leadership that we as young people also need to embrace and support and be a part of. So just to highlight, during the moon landing, when at that time it was the biggest challenge of that generation to get somebody onto the moon, what do you think was the average age in the control room of the engineers? You might think 40, 30. It was actually 26. So it was young engineers that helped solve that generation's challenge, and that is what we need for our generation's challenge, for the climate challenge. So with that, I just want to close on the Prime Minister of Fiji's quote that we do not need to fear the future if we have the courage to act now. And we certainly have the courage. So let us not fear the future. Let's embrace it and enjoy it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Max, for that uplifting message and an optimistic outlook towards the future. I mean, we've had many people come here and talk about how it's almost the end of the world, but he says he's excited to be alive at this time, and I think that is something that is recommendable and something that maybe a kind of attitude that most of us should have at this time. And now it's time for Pierre Kruger. He is working with the Nomad Lodges. He will tell us about how tourism can be a conservation tool.
Well, tourism as a conservation tool, that may be a bit a crazy idea. I remember 30 years ago when I went to the headquarters of the WWF. I was speaking about this idea, and those people were looking at me like, this guy must be crazy. And do you think that now things have changed a little bit? People are calling me and say to me, Pierre, we want to have a solution to bring some solution to conserve some lands. Can you make, please, a proposal about tourism? Why is it so important? I think that tourism, as a professional, I work for about 25 years now in tourism. And it's always inspiring to travel. It's always inspiring for the people to see something new, some new ideas, and this can be very relevant in terms of conservation. So 6 years ago, I had a crazy idea, and I decided to begin something from scratch. And that's not working. Oh, sorry. I've been in the Amazon in this. Just I was looking for a specific place in the Amazon, and I really find a place very special for me. You know, those kind of places who give you a lot of energy. And I say I have to start something from scratch here, and I can start to make a model in terms of ecotourism. And what's the idea? The idea is really to bring tourists there, but like tourists that we want to have in these kind of places, tourists who are interested in landscape, in culture, and this is very amazing. It can change their mind in terms of many things in conservation. So we are located in a very specific place. Actually, we are between a huge national park of 300,000 hectares and an indigenous community of 200,000 hectares. And this makes this place very special. So you can feel the nature, you can feel the culture, and what's really amazing in this place, that the people can feel the nature. And there is a perfect balance between communities, local communities, and the nature landscape. And this is something very important now. In our connected world, we have lost this relationship with nature, and I think it's very important for the people to have this relation back with the nature. And so we wanted to do something from the very beginning, and very getting inspired by the local population. So we sit down, we speak to the locals, and we explain a little bit the project, and they were quite amazed at the beginning, and then they begin to work with us to share their knowledge about the nature. And this is all about the project. The idea of this project is to be like a lab where everybody can come, everybody who is concerned about the project can come and give his inputs about the project, and just bring something positive in the project. And all this together, we try to do something very well made all together with a lot of inputs from many different people. You were talking about young people. This is very important for me. I think we are working with 3 universities in Switzerland, and they participate to the project. And why is it so important? Because those people, young people, they came in the project, they're convinced about the project, they have fresh ideas, they are really good inputs. And for us, it's really important. So this is the good thing about tourism, that it can be related with a lot of different things, a lot of different industries and people. So we really want to put everything together and to make something very sustainable. But sustainability, for me, the definition of sustainability is really about commitment. So we really have to commit about what we're doing. We really have to commit with the local population. And this is a project in the one we're really going into the best commitment we can do. So about the commitment, the first thing which is very essential for us is to keep the place where we are, to really preserve and conserve the nature landscape where we are. So this is really the first step, and then we see about the local population, because we want everybody with the local population who are living in a right place, in good conditions, with good educations, and no problem of disease or everything. So in this area where I showed you, we have 22 local communities, and we really work with the 22 communities integrated in the project, and we want them to show and to show what are their everyday lives, and what are really their cultural aspects. We really want to be inspired about them. So the first thing we've done in terms of conservation in the area, it's a very simple thing. I think the idea is also about this project to be a lab, but to be like something we can replicate everywhere in the world. It's very simple. So we have been to the local communities, to every communities, and we share just plastic bags, just for them to give back their waste. And we give them, instead of waste, we give them like local food, basic food burden, like salt and rice, something they really need. And the idea was to make them, well, proud about their work, to participate to this program of Waste for Food. And we were talking now with the local authorities of Puerto Nariño to use those material and to recyclate it in boards to make some passerelle and floating boats. We're working also very much in terms of with the local government to learn a lot about learn the people about tourism and how to manage tourism in their daily life. The idea is not to change their life. The idea is to get them some more inputs to be able to work with us in the project. So basically, thank you very much. I'm astonished about the time. I'm not sure it's time now to finish, but just concretely to finish, I want just to explain you that the idea of this project is to really make an example of sustainability with commitment, integrating the local population. And I really think that tourism in terms of conservation can be very useful, because the people who are coming to us, who are coming and visiting the place, they are seeing what we are doing, and they're like ambassadors when they come back to their lands and to speak with their friends and relatives. And this is the most important. I mean, in terms of communication, our guests can be very, very useful and can be really ambassadors about sustainability. So thank you very much for your attention, and I am ready if you want to ask other questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pierre. It was okay time-wise. I would have come on stage if I would have thought that you're taking up too much time, but everything was in the limits that we had set. So thank you very much for that. And as he said, if you have any questions for him about ecotourism, about green travel, about involving the local community in whatever you do, then you can see him after this session. Now, my next speaker is Dr. Hannah Peck. She is the Deputy Director of Cool Earth, And she will be here to discuss lessons learned from Peru to Papua New Guinea in funding income generation schemes for forest communities. Her question is, what's next? Welcome, Hannah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, actually, I really want to visit one of those Colombian lodges. It looks amazing. So yeah, I work for Cool Earth, which is a small UK-based charity, and we work alongside communities to protect forest. This statistic has been bandied around the conference a lot today, which is that 12% of greenhouse gases actually come from deforestation, particularly of tropical rainforest. And 80% of that deforestation is actually from small-scale illegal logging, rather than the clear-cutting we think of when we think of the Amazon being cut down. And the best people in place to protect that rainforest are those that are living there, those that have the most to lose from its destruction. And Cool Earth began about 10 years ago with that in mind, that if you give communities a helping hand to protect their rainforests, it could actually be one of the most effective mitigation strategies for climate change. And we were very lucky that around that time, a chief of a community deep in the Peruvian Amazon heard about Cool Earth. This was a man called Cesar Bustamante. He was living on the banks of the Rio Ene. To the east, there was hundreds of miles of pristine rainforest, and to the west, miles and miles of deforested, destructed land up to the foothills of the Andes. And Cesar had been offered thousands of dollars by some illegal loggers for 10 of the cedar trees in the community. And this was a very tempting offer at the time. The community was very poor. There were high rates of malaria. 100% of the school kids had anemia from lack of protein, and they didn't have enough money to buy fuel for emergency evacuations to hospitals. But Cesar and his community didn't want to sell their trees to the loggers. They'd been living there for generations. It was part of their life, and wanted to find an alternative solution. Cesar happened to be good friends with an extraordinary anthropologist called Dilwyn Jenkin, who'd been working with the Ashaninka community for the last 30 years. And he'd heard that Cool Earth was looking for more communities to work with and put us in touch. Cesar invited us to visit, and back then, we wanted to try a really simple idea of simply offering the community money, but with the agreement that they would have to form an association, have about 10 members of the community voted in to decide how that funds were spent, and to open a bank account to keep those funds safe, but also to agree to not sell any not sell any trees to loggers for the next year. And the community was able to spend that funding whatever they wanted. And they decided to spend it on a simple wooden structure for drying cocoa beans. And that meant that the cocoa beans then didn't go moldy, and they were able to make an extra profit. And that was invested back into the community. And within a year, there'd been no trees sold to loggers, and the community was very happy with the partnership. They told their neighbors, and we went from protecting 30,000 acres to gradually working with more communities and protecting 140,000 acres and working with a population of 3,000. This meant we were able to scale up and work in northern Peru with the Awahun community, and there we did similar things, investing in cocoa production, and also some fish farming. And after a few years, we were able to use satellite analysis to look at what was going on the ground, and found that, quite shockingly, in the communities outside our partnership area, there was up to 25% degradation in the forest, whereas looking inside our partnership, it was less than 1%. So we were absolutely delighted to see this was working really well. And more recently, we've moved over to Papua New Guinea, where the social structure there is very different, but the threats are from palm plantation. The palm plantation is offering a lot of money to grow row upon row of palm trees. And here, the clan culture is very different to Peru, and the community association doesn't work quite so well because you have clans that are more dominant than others, and so getting cohesion and decisions about how the funding is spent is a little bit more tricky. But we keep persevering, and we're trying new ideas, the possibility of working at the household level or working with clans individually. And what we've done is also looked at our partnerships in more general and found that the benefits of using cooperatives, agricultural cooperatives, has been fantastic, but that it means that some of the community miss out on getting some of that funding, and also that those cooperatives tend to be led by men, and that the funding doesn't necessarily reach down to the women and the children in the family. And the solution we found to that is utilizing those wonderful entrepreneurs, those key individuals and communities who have some great ideas but don't necessarily have the support or the means to carry out their ideas. And just by giving a little bit of support to them has worked really well. So for example, in our Arahun community, there's a group of about 30 women who produce beautiful jewelry from seeds from the forest. And they, with a little bit of support, they've been doing really well over the years. And they've actually managed to get a contract with a chain of shops in Peru, and they're now selling their jewelry nationwide. And in Papua New Guinea, more recently, some women have started up a sewing group, and they're selling clothes across in markets. And also there's a family bakery that's been going well, selling really good coconut scones. It's really hard not to want to help with so many needs across the communities. And three that particularly come to mind are the need to help with tenure, which has been spoken about so much at this conference. In Papua New Guinea, we gave some funds at the beginning of our project. Sorry, in Peru, we gave some funds at the beginning of our project to help with some legal fees for that. And in Papua New Guinea, it's very different, where the community actually already own all the land, but some of those community landowners actually live outside the community, and that creates a little bit of conflict in how the forest is managed, and makes it a little bit harder to decide how to protect the forest with them. We've been looking for government support and ideas on that, and always looking out for new ways of making it work. Another problem we found across the communities is malnutrition, and particularly in Peru, where they often don't have enough protein sources. And we've been working with fish farming because the rivers just haven't got enough fish for the population, and also with breeding chickens. And then the final one that happens across all partnerships, particularly working with agricultural cooperatives, is the need for soil protection, getting nutrients back in the soil. And we've been very lucky to work with the Inga Foundation, who use a species of Inga plant native to the Amazon, which is brilliant at doing intercropping, can be used for fuel wood so that people aren't having to collect fuel from the forest. And we're hoping to use that elsewhere as well. And we're in a really lucky position that we have mainly unrestricted funding, which means that we can continue to be community-led. We can work with what the community wants on the ground at the time, try out new projects, and not be scared of making mistakes, and just keep working to make things work effectively. And what I want from this is to explain that we really would love to try our ideas in other parts of the world, and the best way of doing that is working with local NGOs who have the knowledge and the experience of working in those areas and know where the support for forest communities are needed most. So please do get in touch if you'd be interested in partnering with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hannah, and please get in touch with her if you are interested in partnering with Cool Earth. And now we're coming to the final talk of these landscapes talks, and this one is from John Colmeem. He is the CEO of the GLF. So if you have any comments about the way things have been going for these 2 days, he is the person to direct those comments at, be it positive or negative. If you want to be a speaker next year, then he's the person to see as well. Or if you just have any recommendations, then you should also tell him that. But right now, he will come on stage as the director of Communications, Outreach, and Engagement at CIFOR, that is the Center for International Forestry Research. And he will talk about one of my favorite foods, that is the avocado. I don't know whether it's a fruit or a vegetable. Maybe that is something that he will clarify during his talk. But right now, please, a big round of applause for John.
Thank you. I have the honor of closing this session, which has just been fantastic. I hope, and we've had a great online audience. That's what this was designed for. We need to thank Elizabeth. She's just done a spectacular job. Elizabeth, thank you very, very, very much. She's a professional, unlike me, she's a professional broadcaster. She's very, very good at what she does. Today I'm going to talk about a little bit about the state of the planet, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how GLF works in this situation. And I'm going to do it with 2 avocados. About a month ago, I bought 2 avocados. I love these things. And I ate one, then I ate another half, and a friend invited me for dinner. And things can't get worse. You know, I didn't go back to the avocado, and I had to throw away a half of it. I don't know about you. How many of you like avocado? How many of you have eaten avocado in the past 2 weeks? Well, we're not alone. Elizabeth's not alone. Avocado is a fruit, and the demand for avocado is off the charts. It's booming all over the world. It's in Europe, we consume about 400,000 tons. It's increasing. Imports are increasing about 16% a year. In China, it's increasing 250% a year. And you know what happens when things start increasing that fast in China? In New Zealand, it even set off a crime spree. Bandits are going into, there's such a demand that bandits are going into orchards at night, filling up pickup trucks and selling them on the black market. So avocados, it's booming all over the world. Where do they come from? In Europe, they come from Kenya, Peru, Guatemala, and Mexico. Now we're going to focus today on Mexico. Mexico is the world's largest producer of avocado. They produce about 50% of the world's exports. It's a business worth $2.5 billion. It's overtaken tomato in Mexico as the 2nd largest exporter, earner. And oil is even more than oil in terms of value in currency reserves. I'm going to check that figure, but it was very high. And most of these avocado come from a place called Michoacan, which is up in the highlands in central Mexico. With that kind of growth, and not only that, earlier this year, prices of avocado in this area went up, doubled in 1 month from the year before. They can't produce this fast enough. Well, that's a great thing. It employs 100,000, gives incomes to 100,000 households. And we all love it. It's organic, it's a superfood, except for there's some issues here. Last year, to grow avocado in Michoacan state, they deforested an area about 80 square kilometers. Now, that may not seem like much, but I'll come back to that. But the problem is also with avocado is it consumes twice the amount of water that these natural forests that they replaced. And it can affect the local reserves. It takes in so much water that in the UK, they talk about that they have imported enough avocado to fill 10,000 Olympic swimming pools of water. That's an amazing figure to me. But why do we care about Mexico? Mexico is a beautiful country that's totally underestimated in terms of how beautiful it is. It contains 15 to 20% of the world's biodiversity. It also contains 10 mammals that are on the extinction list. It has 100 that are threatened in various ways. That doesn't mean they're facing extinction right now. This particular area is where the monarch butterfly biosphere reserve is. Right now it's not under threat, but the local ecologists, who are very good, are saying that if we're not careful, we could start to affect that beautiful historic site. And then you go back to, and I don't know if you realize it, but we are now well, I think most of you probably realize it, but maybe not people out there, that we are now in the largest mass extinction since the dinosaurs. And if our friends at IUCN, that are a member of GLF, say that if we continue in the way we're going, we could lose half the world's biodiversity in 45 years or so. Well, let's also talk about deforestation. 80 kilometers, that's not very much, but it's a piece of the picture, the global picture. Last year, according to the FAO, on 215, the latest forest assessment, we deforested an area of about net loss. This is very important. The net loss, because was about 4 million hectares. In the tropics, which is very, very important to us, it was about 6 million hectares. The good news is the deforestation rate has definitely come down by a tremendous amount since the 1990s, but if we continue, this is still too fast. And if we continue the way we are, if you talk to our friends at the IPCC that often come to GLF, they'll say in 19 years we're going to hit the ceiling of the 2-degree ceiling, which would be 3.4 degrees or something above what it was pre-industrial. Okay, so we're doomed. But see, anyone at GLF, we don't think so. I know everyone here, we don't think so. We're optimists. I remember someone that came to one of our conferences said, optimism is a moral imperative. So what's the answer here? And that's the great thing is there's a lot of answers here. It turns out that there's a local indigenous group, Carpine, I might get it wrong. There's a local indigenous group there near the biosphere that's been growing organic avocado for over 300 years. They're very good at it. And they've now taken on in their lands that they've stopped deforestation. They're moving avocado onto degraded former agriculture lands and onto agriculture lands. And not only that, they're rewarded with a price increase of about 1/3 above the standard price if you use it through the more harmful ways. We got everything we need. I was in a meeting this morning with the finance guys. Finance is one of our themes, innovative finance for sustainable development. And they said the big issue that all the banks have is there's nothing investable out there. Well, what could be more investable than this, right? We have an unlimited demand. We've got a price that's doubling. We've got smallholders. Most of these farmers have 5 to 7 hectares. And they're all grouped in an association. Now, if we can't find a way to aggregate funds to get them into a large lending program, I don't know what else we can do. It's perfect. And we've got the knowledge of organic farming. They're ready. And we've got great local scientists. They've got fantastic policies in Mexico City working on this. The Attorney General's office involved with trying to stop deforestation. You've got everything on the ground. And this is GLF again. GLF has to connect, we have to connect the consumer with the producer. Now, only 8% of the current avocado in this area is produced organically. Only 8%, although you get a significant price increase if you did. So there's no organic certification program, but we have FFC and we have Fair Trade, and we have a lot of groups here that work with this area. There's also intercropping. By the way, we have eCraft and others work on agroforestry. Intercropping is very successful with avocado in that area. There's lots of ways we can do this, but we've got to connect the consumer with the producer. And the last thing we have to do is we have to change our own personal behavior. It always starts with us. Now, I threw away only 25% of my 2 avocado. But the reality is that we waste about 1/3, some people say more, of all the food we eat in Europe. A lot of that's lost in supply chains in the south, but in the north, we mainly throw it away. Now, I've been feeling guilty about it ever since I wrote this speech, and ever since I thought about that half avocado I threw away. We can change. We can turn this around. We've got the knowledge. We've got the connections. We need to connect. We need to work with those local scientists. We need to work with those local communities. There's extension agents out there. We need to connect with all of us, and we need to change our own behavior. And we can turn this thing around, and we can turn this movement into something that can change the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, John. I will ask you to remain on the stage because we have few minutes, really few minutes, for a short question and answer session. So, my dear speakers, please welcome. And my audience, you've been wonderful throughout these 2 days, so please work with me one final time. If you have any question, raise your hand now so that we can get the mic to you, and then we have the speakers answer them. Questions, questions, questions to any of the speakers? Anything you want to know about avocados? You may come here. That way the camera captures you better. About satellites, about ecotourism. Okay, we have a question there.
Yeah, let me talk about satellites. Planet Image. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was wonderful. So I don't know, maybe I didn't get it clearly because I came late, but yes, it's very good. The image is not only a digital image to process information, but also an indicator to carbon emission. So I want to know the degree of accuracy for the carbon emission that is in the image. Thank you.
Thank you. A question for Tara?
Yeah, sure. So that illustration, I should note, is sort of a step of where we can go with the analytical capabilities that are today being developed. So there's sort of this concurrent revolution happening where Earth observation technologies are improving, and at the same time, machine learning technologies are improving. And I think we're just starting to see what the capabilities of bringing those two things together are. So today, we have the daily high-resolution imagery. We have a number, I was actually just sharing with some folks outside, we have a program called the Application Developer Program, which allows developers, engineers, access to our data to do their own research and development, to build these analytical capabilities on top of it. So we're just seeing, it's not just in forests, but in a number of sectors and applications, we're starting to see what's possible. So that really is more of a roadmap of where we're going collaboratively with all of our application developer partners. So I'd say we're moving towards that, and I will keep you updated on what the accuracy outputs of those are. But really, it's to highlight that why I'm here today is to share this is where we see this field going, and we want to know how we work with the international community to make sure that whatever we do develop is ultimately useful and adopted in practice.
Thank you, Tara. More questions? Yes.
Hello, my name is Mar from the United Nations University here in Bonn. I have two questions to different speakers. The first one is I'm just transmitting a message from a friend who's not here today, but he would like to know more about the Pod 1 part of the Planet initiative. And for the last speaker, I'm Mexican, actually, and we love avocados in Mexico. And avocados are not cash crops. They're staple food in Mexico. How can you ensure with these initiatives that it's not only labeling organic and tripling the price, but how to make it affordable and make fair trade? Because we don't want to export all of our avocado and just to have it for international demand. Now it's getting so expensive in Mexico that you can just Google all the memes we have about the price of avocado. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Brief answers, please.
Avocados. Yeah, anything we do is going to be using local knowledge and local partners. So I'm not going to find the solution to avocado, but there's so many organizations involved with GLF, some 3,000. Conifor from Mexico, and you've got great experience there, and you've got the local knowledge, I just think with the certification programs are also tricky, no question. There was a discussion today with the finance guys that do we want to set a certification for restored land? Very difficult, but we might want to say standards. There's different ways you can approach it. But somehow to give an incentive to those farmers that want to do organic farming, it's still going to be consuming a lot of water, but we can do it better than we're doing it now, and we meaning all of our partners in Mexico and Latin America, and now this is going to be a booming market, obviously, around the world. But no, what I'm trying to do is raise awareness of the issue and how we have to connect, and that these solutions are out there. We don't need pilot projects. We just need to get to work, I think. But it will be with local partners there and local partners here that are importing avocados.
Thank you. Who was the first question for?
I think it was me, but I didn't quite.
Oh, you no longer have the mic? Oh,
yeah, for the Planet lady?
Ah, for Planet, yeah.
I'm not sure if I quite caught the question. I think it was a question of what inspired Mission 1 or what came before it.
I was just asked to ask more about the component that is called Pod 1 on Planet, but maybe that's a subset.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Pod 1, I'm not sure, but will follow up after and I can get your friend's email.
Okay, more questions? Yeah,
hey,
sure.
Hey, my name is Dennis. I am not an expert in satellites and stuff, but I just have a simple question maybe. What's the lifespan of those satellites, and did you think about bringing them back to Earth, like SpaceX maybe, or what's the lifespan of those satellites?
Yep, so the lifespan is only about 3 to 4 years, which is actually very good for us because, as I mentioned, we iterate fast and often. So between 2013 and now, we've launched 13 different designs of satellite. Between Build 9 and Build 13, there's not a single piece of the same hardware. So that's how rapidly they are getting better, and so we want to be able to put new ones up there because it increases the Earth observation capacities. Our satellites, after 3 or 4 years, re-enter the atmosphere, and because they're so small, they burn up entirely upon re-entry. So there's no space debris or anything like that.
One final question. This is your opportunity to talk. Is there sorry, I hadn't seen you. Yeah, you get the final question.
Okay. This is, I don't know if any of you can answer this question. This was just something I thought of, and maybe something for everyone to think of. Something that really struck me yesterday was Sadhguru talking about how environmentalism is often so anti, it's so negative, it's so like this, you know, picking holes, being critical and saying, you know, you can't do this, you can't do that. And I was just thinking in terms of like, I'm vegetarian, I absolutely love avocados, but I have recently come up against obviously the fact that they're incredibly, especially in the UK, like there's, you know, they're really not good for the environment in terms of, in our consumption. But I was just wondering how you might put that positively, how we can actually positively influence consumption rather than it being like this negative, this kind of taking away this, because that just doesn't seem to really have that much effect outside of the immediate sphere of the converted.
So,
Avocado.
positive messages is what the people want to hear, like we heard from Max, for example.
No, I agree. And we have to be very clear that we don't want to kill this industry. This is a wonderful industry for people in Mexico and people in Chile and people, so we need to preserve it. And it's just like forests. We can't conserve the forest, we have to use them. And we have to do it sustainably. So we need to find a more sustainable approach to everything we're doing in the world. And that means the way we grow avocado, the way we ship it here, the way we consume it here. And we need to connect and be part of a group. I don't think we have to stop eating avocado. We all be bummed out. But I think we can do it better. And any move we make in that direction, and this is a huge possibility here, because only 8% is grown organically, and they get a 30% incentive to grow it organically. And they have the resources to develop those kinds of industries. Not easy, but you know, if we didn't take on things that were difficult, we would stay in the situation we are, and our kids wouldn't see gorillas, right? You know, we have to change.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe just to add, I mean, it's really the consumer power where we can influence, and there's so many businesses that are trying to, you know, reduce the carbon footprint of their supply chain. Because they see that that'll give them the advantage in the future market, the new climate economy market. And that's the kind of behavior you just have to support and you have to drive with. So, you know, buy organic if you can, source it as locally as possible, and that's how we as consumers can influence the whole industry, the market, and help drive this whole, you know, sustainable revolution that is going to be shaping our age. I mean, as you say, like every component of our economy is going to have to shift, and either they're on top of it or they're going to lose out.
And this,
Thank you very much.
And this, by the way, is not...
Final sentence, John, please.
This is not a top-down solution. This is being driven, the farmers themselves want to do organic. They understand what's going on. They want to change, and they want to change the way they're doing it. And the government wants to do it. There's good policies there. There's a little bit of rights work to be done. But, you know, we just have to move and do anything we can. Consumers have a lot of power, particularly with avocado, not necessarily with oil palm. That's another issue.
Okay, consumers have a lot of power. That is the message that we will take home. Thank you very much for being here for the Landscape Talks for these 2 days. Thank you very much. A big thank you to my speakers. All the videos of all the talks from yesterday and today are online. If you want to watch them, if you want to share them with your friends and family, you can do that. So this is the end of the Landscape Talks, and at 6 p.m. we'll have the closing plenary. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you very much.